I found out my husband has been lying about his job for 3 years, and we've been living off my inheritance while he pretends to go to work every day. He leaves the house in a suit, comes home at 6 p.m., and I just discovered he's been spending his days at the public library. Our kids have no idea, and neither did I until I saw him at a coffee shop on Tuesday at 2 p.m. I, 34F, have been married to my husband David, 36M, for 12 years. We have 3 kids together, Emma, 10, Sophie, 7, and Lucas, 4. Up until Tuesday afternoon, I thought I had a pretty good marriage. Not perfect, but solid. We rarely fought, David was involved with the kids, and we seemed happy. I thought we were a team. David works in tech, or at least I thought he did. He's been a software engineer at a company called TechVision Solutions for the past 8 years. Before that, he worked at 2 other tech companies. He's always been the primary breadwinner while I stayed home with the kids. His salary was around $140,000 a year, which allowed us to live comfortably in our suburban home, take nice vacations, and save for the kids' college funds. 3 years ago, my father passed away. He left me a substantial inheritance, $890,000. It was life-changing money, the kind of money that could set our family up for generations if we were smart about it. David and I had long conversations about what to do with it. We decided to pay off our mortgage, $320,000, put $200,000 into college funds for the kids, invest $250,000 in index funds for retirement, and keep the rest as an emergency fund and for home improvements. Paying off the mortgage felt incredible. David suggested that since we no longer had that huge monthly payment, we could redirect that money into more investments and maybe splurge a little on life. We started taking better vacations, Hawaii, Disney World, a week in Italy last summer. We renovated the kitchen. We got a second car, a nicer one. Nothing extravagant, but definitely more comfortable than we'd lived before. I noticed that David seemed more relaxed after we paid off the mortgage. He smiled more, seemed less stressed about work. He started taking longer lunches, he said, and his company had apparently implemented a more flexible work-from-home policy, so he was home by 6 p.m. every night instead of 7 or 8 p.m. like before. I thought it was wonderful. He had more time with the kids, we had more time together, and he seemed genuinely happier. Looking back now, all the signs were there. I just didn't see them. About 6 months after we paid off the mortgage, David started being vague about work. If I asked him how his day was, he'd say fine, or the usual. If I asked about specific projects, he'd give me technical jargon that I didn't understand, and then change the subject. I didn't push because, honestly, I didn't really understand his work anyway, and he'd been doing this for years. Why would I suddenly question it? He still got dressed every morning in his business casual attire, usually khakis and a button-down shirt, sometimes a suit for important meetings. He'd leave the house at 8:30 a.m. with his laptop bag, his coffee thermos, and a kiss goodbye. He'd come home at 6 p.m., we'd have dinner as a family, help the kids with homework, do bedtime routines, and then we'd watch TV or read before bed. It was routine. It was normal. It was our life. Except it was all a lie. Tuesday afternoon, I was running errands in the city. I had a dentist appointment at 1 p.m., and afterward, I decided to stop by this little coffee shop that I love but rarely get to visit because it's 30 minutes from our house. I walked in around 2:15 p.m., ordered my latte, and turned around to find a table. That's when I saw him. David was sitting in the corner, in jeans and a hoodie, with his laptop open and headphones on. Not his work laptop. I could see it was his personal MacBook, the old one he uses for browsing the internet at home. He was completely absorbed in whatever he was doing, typing away, occasionally taking a sip from a nearly empty coffee cup that had clearly been sitting there for a while based on the ring stains on the napkin underneath it. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like an hour, but was probably 30 seconds. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. David was supposed to be at work, at his office, at TechVision Solutions, which was in the opposite direction from where we were. In a suit, not a hoodie. In a meeting or writing code, or whatever it is software engineers do all day. I walked over to his table. My hands were shaking. David. He looked up, and I watched the color drain from his face. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. He pulled off his headphones.
Babe. Hey.
What are you? I didn't know you'd be Dash. What are you doing here? My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Distant. Cold. I had a half day. Finished my sprint early, so they let us go. I thought I'd grab some coffee and do some personal stuff before heading home. It was a good lie. Quick, believable. But I could see the panic in his eyes. And something in my gut, some instinct I didn't know I had, told me he was lying. You're wearing jeans, I said. Casual Friday. Well, casual Tuesday. They've been doing this thing where Dash. David. Stop. We stared at each other. The coffee shop chatter faded into white noise. I could see the exact moment he realized I knew. His shoulders sagged. His face crumpled. He looked like he might cry. Not here, he whispered. Please. Can we talk at home? I should have said no. I should have demanded answers right there. But I had my own panic rising in my chest. What would I do if he told me the truth in public and I fell apart? What if I started screaming? What about the kids' pickup time? I have to get Sophie from school at 3:15, I heard myself say. Be home by 4. I left without my latte. The next hour and a half is a blur. I picked up Sophie, smiled and nodded at the other moms, drove home on autopilot, put on a movie for Sophie, and waited. Lucas was already home with our neighbor, who watches him on Tuesdays. Everything looked normal. Everything felt like a nightmare. David got home at 3:55 p.m. 5 minutes early. He'd changed back into his khakis and button-down. He'd actually gone somewhere to change clothes to maintain the lie, even knowing it was over. That detail, for some reason, made it so much worse. We sent the kids to the playroom. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had thousands of meals, homework sessions, family game nights. David put his head in his hands. How long have you known? He asked. Known what? I don't know anything, David. That's the problem. Why don't you tell me what there is to know? He took a deep breath. I lost my job 3 years ago. The world tilted. What? 3 years ago. March 15th, 2022. I was laid off. TechVision did a round of cuts, and I was one of them. They gave me a severance package, 3 months, and outplacement services. I was supposed to find something else quickly. But then your dad died and you inherited all that money, and I thought I'd just take a little time. Decompress. The severance would cover me for a few months, and then I'd start looking. I couldn't breathe. 3 years ago. Right before my dad died. Right after. The timing, I didn't want to tell you because you were grieving, and then we paid off the mortgage, and suddenly we had all this breathing room financially, and I thought, maybe I'll take 6 months. Really think about what I want to do next. I was so burned out, babe. I was working 60-hour weeks, I barely saw the kids, and I thought, this is my chance. Our chance. So you've been lying to me every single day for 3 years. I was going to tell you. At first, I was looking for jobs, I swear. I applied to maybe 50 positions in those first few months. But I kept getting rejected, or I'd get through a few rounds of interviews, and then they'd hire someone else. And the longer it went on, the harder it got to tell you. And then I realized, we didn't need the money. With the mortgage paid off and your inheritance, we were fine. More than fine. We were actually better off than we'd been before, because I wasn't stressed about work, and we had all this time together as a family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Where have you been going every day? The library mostly. Sometimes coffee shops like today. Sometimes the park when the weather's nice. I'd work on personal projects, read, learn new programming languages. I've actually been building some apps, nothing serious, just for fun. I'd come home at normal work hours so you wouldn't suspect anything. You've been pretending to go to work. Every single day. For 3 years. I know how it sounds, Dash. Do you? I was shaking now, anger replacing shock. Do you know how it sounds? It sounds like you've been living a fantasy, while I've been home raising our children thinking we were financially stable because my husband had a good job. Do you know what I've been doing with the money from the inheritance? He looked confused. We invested it, Dash. I've been supplementing our income, David. I've been paying for the vacations, the renovations, the new car, all of it. Because I thought we had your salary plus the extra breathing room from no mortgage. I've been slowly draining our savings and emergency fund to maintain our lifestyle because the numbers didn't quite add up, but I thought maybe you'd gotten a raise, or we were just budgeting better. The color drained from his face again. What do you mean, draining? I grabbed my phone and pulled up our bank accounts. Our emergency fund is down to $45,000 from $120,000. The investment account hasn't grown because I've been pulling money out of it. We've spent almost $200,000 over 3 years, David. I thought we were living on your salary. Where did you think the money was coming from? I didn't look. I didn't check. You always handle the finances and everything seemed fine, and I just assumed dash. You assumed what? That money magically appears? That we could live on nothing? He started crying, actual tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. I couldn't figure out how to tell you. Every day that passed made it worse. I was trapped in this lie, and I didn't know how to get out. I stood up. I couldn't sit there anymore. Did you get any severance pay when you were laid off? 3 months. About $35,000 after taxes. And what did you do with it? He was silent. David, what did you do with $35,000? I still have most of it. It's in a separate account. I was too scared to move it or spend it because then you'd see it on our statements. I laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. So let me get this straight. You've had $35,000 sitting in a secret account while I've been draining my father's inheritance, the money he worked his entire life to save and leave to me, to pay for our life because I thought we had your income. You've been watching me stress about expenses and budget and figure out how to afford things, and you said nothing. I wanted to tell you dash, but you didn't. You chose to lie to me every single day. You got dressed in work clothes like you were going to an office. You created an entire fake life. Do you know what that is? That's not just lying, David. That's gaslighting. That's making me question reality itself. Don't say that. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. You have. You've stolen 3 years of honesty from me. You've stolen almost $200,000 of my inheritance. You've made me complicit in your lie to our children. Emma asked me last month if Daddy's job was going well because she wanted to make sure we could afford her soccer camp, and I told her, of course, Daddy works very hard, and we're very lucky. I lied to our daughter, David, because you lied to me first. The kids walked in then. Sophie wanted a snack. The conversation had to stop. David made them peanut butter crackers while I stood at the sink, gripping the counter, trying not to scream or cry or both. That night, David slept on the couch. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. How had I not known? What else had I missed? Could I ever trust him again? Should I? The next morning, I called in sick to the volunteer work I do at Emma's school. I dropped the kids off, came home, and told David we needed to see our bank statements, all of them from the past 3 years. We spent all day, Wednesday, going through our finances. It was worse than I thought. When David was working, we'd been living on about $140,000 a year in expenses mortgage before we paid it off. Food, kids' activities, insurance, cars, everything. After we paid off the mortgage, our necessary expenses dropped to about $65,000 a year for basics. But we hadn't adjusted our lifestyle. We'd actually increased our spending. Nicer vacations, more frequent date nights, better clothes for the kids, organic everything, a house cleaner twice a month, a landscaper, all the streaming services. We were spending about $95,000 a year. For the first year after David lost his job, it wasn't obvious. He'd had his severance and we'd paid off the mortgage, so things actually felt more comfortable. But then the severance ran out, and we kept spending. I'd been pulling from our savings, thinking it was just temporary, that we were going through an expensive phase with the kids. But it wasn't temporary. It was every month for 2 years. Sometimes $5,000, sometimes $10,000, one month almost $15,000 when we went to Italy. David watched me add up the numbers. $187,000, I said. That's what we've spent from my inheritance beyond what we should have if we'd been living on just savings and investment returns. That's what your lie has cost us. I'll get a job, he said immediately. I'll start applying today. I'll take anything. I'll make this right.
How?
How do you make this right, David? You can't give me back 3 years of trust. You can't give me back the time you spent at libraries and coffee shops while I was home alone with 3 kids thinking you were at work providing for us. I was still coming home every night. I was still being a dad. You were being a part-time dad. You showed up at 6 p.m. after spending all day doing whatever you wanted while I was dealing with tantrums and homework and meals and cleaning and laundry and everything else that goes into running a household and raising children. You got to clock out of responsibility every single day while pretending you were being responsible. He didn't have an answer for that. Thursday, I called my brother. I needed to tell someone, and my brother Alex has always been level-headed. He listened to everything, silent, and then said, "Divorce him." Alex dash. No, I'm serious. That's not just lying. That's financial abuse. He stole from you. That was Dad's money. Money Dad wanted you to have, and David pissed it away while playing hooky from adult life. You have 3 kids to think about. What happens when that money runs out completely? What if you'd never caught him and you'd kept spending until there was nothing left?
I hadn't thought about that.
How long would it have gone on? Would David have ever told me? Or would he have let us spend every penny of my inheritance? And then what? Bankruptcy? Ruin?
I need to think, I said.
Friday, I confronted David with the question I'd been avoiding. Did you ever actually look for work? After those first few months? He hesitated too long. David. I looked occasionally. Not seriously. I'd scroll through job postings sometimes, but I never applied. I kept telling myself I would, next week, next month when I was ready. But I wasn't ready. I liked my life. I liked being free. While I paid for your freedom with my father's money, I didn't think of it that way. How else is there to think of it? Over the weekend, I made David tell the kids. Not about the money, but about the job. We sat them down Sunday morning, and David explained that he'd lost his job a while ago and hadn't told anyone because he was embarrassed, but now he was going to find a new one. Emma, bless her heart, looked at him with her big 10-year-old eyes and said, "How long ago?" David couldn't look at her. "A few years." "So you've been lying?" "Yes." "Lying is wrong. You always tell us lying is wrong." "You're right. It is. I made a mistake. A big one." Sophie asked if we were going to lose our house. Lucas asked if that meant no more iPad time. Kids process things so differently than adults. But Emma was quiet for the rest of the day, and I could see her watching David with this new wariness. He'd broken something with her, some fundamental trust, and I didn't know if he could fix it. It's been 5 days since I found out. David has applied to 47 jobs. He's had 2 phone screens, one of which turned into a first-round interview scheduled for this week. He's sleeping on the couch. He's trying, I can see he's trying, but I don't know if trying is enough. I told him yesterday that I need space to think, and I've asked him to stay with his brother for a few weeks. He cried but agreed. He's moving out tomorrow. My friends say I should divorce him. My brother says I should divorce him. My mother, when I finally told her, said I should think of the children and try to work it out, which is insane considering what David's done affects the children most of all. But I'm not thinking about divorce yet. I'm thinking about the fact that I've lost almost $200,000 because I trusted my husband. I'm thinking about the fact that every morning for 3 years, he kissed me goodbye and went to live a life I knew nothing about. I'm thinking about the fact that he watched me worry about money and said nothing. He watched me make financial decisions based on false information and said nothing. I'm thinking about the fact that I don't know who I'm married to anymore. Reddit, I need perspective. Am I overreacting? People are telling me that he didn't cheat, he didn't hurt anyone, he was just scared and made a mistake. But it doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like a choice he made every single day for 3 years. It feels like betrayal. Should I try to fix this? Can this even be fixed? Or is this one of those things that's just too broken? Update, 1 week later. A lot has happened in the past week, and I need to get it out. David moved in with his brother last Monday as planned. The kids have been asking when he's coming home, and I've been honest with them. Daddy and I need some time to work through some things.
Emma seems to understand.
Sophie and Lucas less so. Tuesday, I went to see a lawyer. Just a consultation to understand my options. The lawyer was sympathetic but blunt. In our state, inheritance is separate property unless it's been commingled with marital assets, which ours has been. The fact that I used it to pay off our joint mortgage and that we've been spending it jointly for 3 years means David could have a claim to what's left in a divorce. That made me physically ill. My father's money, that David helped spend under false pretenses, and he could claim half of it. Wednesday, David's brother Mike called me. I love my brother, he said, but what he did is unforgivable. If you divorce him, I'll testify about his lies. I'll help you however I can. Apparently, David had confessed everything to Mike, and Mike was horrified. Thursday, I got a call from TechVision Solutions. David had apparently listed his manager from 3 years ago as a reference for one of his job applications, and the HR person from the new company had called TechVision to verify employment. TechVision called me because the new company asked about David's current position, and they were confused since he hadn't worked there in 3 years. The woman on the phone was kind but confused. I'm calling because there seems to be some miscommunication. Someone is calling to verify David's employment, but he was part of our 2022 layoffs. I wanted to make sure he wasn't telling people he still works here. I explained that no, I was aware he didn't work there, and it must be a misunderstanding with the reference check. But after I hung up, I realized David has been applying to jobs saying he currently works at TechVision. He's been lying on his applications. I called him immediately. Are you telling these companies you still work at TechVision? Long pause. I had to. I have a 3-year gap otherwise. No one will hire someone with a 3-year gap. So you're committing fraud. It's not fraud. It's stretching the truth. Everyone does it. Everyone does not do it, David. And now you've involved me because they called me to verify. He started crying again. I don't know what else to do. I can't tell them the truth. I'll never get hired. That's not my problem. You created this mess. You figure out how to fix it honestly. I hung up on him. That was the moment I knew. I knew I was done. Friday, I filed for divorce. I met with the lawyer again, and we're going after the $187,000 David cost us as dissipation of marital assets due to fraud. It's a long shot, but we're trying. David showed up at the house Saturday morning, served with papers, sobbing. He begged me to reconsider.
He said he'd do anything.
Therapy, counseling, he'd get a job at McDonald's if he had to, anything to prove he could change. I said, David, you're still lying. You're lying on job applications. You haven't changed at all. You're still choosing the easy lie over the hard truth.
He left.
The kids saw him crying. Emma asked me if this was her fault. I held her and told her that no, sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt each other, and sometimes those mistakes can't be fixed, but it was never, ever her fault. I called my dad's lawyer, the one who handled his estate. I explained everything. He's going to help me protect what's left of the inheritance. Today is Sunday. The house is quiet. The kids are at David's brother's place for the afternoon because despite everything, he's still their father, and they need that relationship. I keep thinking about that moment in the coffee shop. How everything changed in an instant. How one moment I had a husband, and the next I had a stranger who looked like him. Reddit, I don't know if I made the right choice. But I made the only choice I could live with. I can't stay married to someone who would lie to my face for 3 years. I can't teach my kids that that's what love looks like.
So here I am.
34 years old, 3 kids, getting divorced, and trying to figure out what the hell comes next. If anyone's been through something similar, I could use some hope right now. Because I'm scared, and I'm angry, and I'm grieving the marriage I thought I had. But at least I'm not lying anymore. At least there's that.